Hi, Slater colleagues. Just saw your video today, the podcast on I want to cover the one about the Meta um, No Language Left Behind project. Um, a few comments. Having been involved in this kind of stuff for a really long time. In fact, way before Facebook ever existed. Um, but the I mean, the whole, I'm going to call them minority languages. I'm not going to call them low resource because there are so many different politically correct versions of this thing to call it, less commonly used, low resource, sparse data, low data, all that kind of stuff. I'm calling them minority languages. Keep it simple. Major language, bring money in. Minority languages don't bring money in. I'm just going to keep it simple. And there's just not, funding for this kind of stuff in general. The, I mean, back in 1998 to 2000, I worked for I was CTO of ELRA, which is the European Language Resource Association, which is an agency set up by the European Commission basically to survey and to survey basically anything about language technologies, databases, all kinds of speech and text and terminology and everything, and then to produce them. I mean, it's a kind of a production warehouse as well as, and I did a lot of the survey work and did a lot of conference talks about the survey work we're doing and the database production we're doing, and producing those databases and being involved in that and all that. A lot of speech stuff. And my reports back then basically said that, and I was serving all of the kind of the language technology providers, and then other users of those. But all the language technology providers in machine translation basically said that there was up to 30 languages. Okay, just all the European languages and all the Americas languages. I'm not talking about the Indian languages, okay, in the Americas, but all the imported languages in the Americas, North and South America, are all European languages. Okay, they all are. So they're basically European languages, and then a couple of Asian languages. And European, I'm saying, Western Europe, Central Europe, Southern Europe, Northern Europe, Scandinavia, and then a couple of Asian languages and Arabic. That was back in the state, and back in 2000, I wrote that report for the European Commission. Was basically the vision for 5 years down the road. Then in 2010, the Haitian earthquake, the earthquake in Haiti happened, and I pulled out my Haitian Creole data from 12 years before from Carnegie Mellon, and we published it, and that allowed Microsoft Translator to put machine translation into place for their system, their statistical system, in 4 days, 17 hours and 30 minutes, 5 days, okay? And then Google came out theirs a week later. And BlackBerry did, we had a bunch of, there are a bunch of that. Now Facebook's got it, everybody's got that Haitian Creole now. Sorry. In that point in time, and I've asked the Microsoft coach, they would run around and say, well, I was the champion of the project, right? And they had me come to give a talk at their Microsoft lecture series, but basically, that point in time was clearly the first time that they had a serious amount of data to be able to train with a statistical system, or enough to be able to consider for a statistical system, a statistical machine translation system, to be able to work on a minority language, exotic language, what do you call these things? And that gave them the benchmark. And then they had a lot of polluted data too, right? So all those SMS messages and stuff they were cleaning up. There was polluted data. My stuff was clean. Because we'd spent 2 years on it, and I was I had labs at people, and I knew what I was really doing. I was creating databases, and I knew the languages, right? So at least that language. And I trained all those people to be translators, and we had a review process, and we did this. It really set that up very well. But so from that point on, and there were only like tennis language 10-ish languages in Google Translate and Microsoft at the time in 2010. And now we get 100 because that allowed those companies to be able to figure out how to do it faster with good data and a lot of data, enough. And I only gave them 1/3 of what I had, right? Because there were some ethical things I had to deal with. Ethically, I didn't want to give it away. I could do it now. I could do it now if I did it a different way. I have thought about it. I could have given away 2/3 or more, but didn't do it. Okay, we couldn't do it at that point in time. But now, Facebook's just basically announcing the same thing as what Google and Microsoft are doing. I mean, they're all doing this. It's a race. It's all a race for see who can do the most languages. Now, when you do a lot of language like that, you're not aiming for quality. And this is what the second I want to come down to. So, and I've talked a lot about inbound and outbound translation, a lot in conferences, okay? Inbound translation is content gisting, tolerance level is high, you accept kind of whatever, you just want to get the message across and understand, you want the message to be understood, okay? And to be easy to understand. The quality has to be perfect, just you don't want laughable stuff. Outbound translation for publication, high quality. So sometimes you get the inward and outward, inbound, outbound, whatever. See my 2004 localization world talk on it in Berlin and Bonn, I think it was. The kind of the important thing to see here is that this is not a breakthrough. This is just all these folks are they're all trying to do the same thing, to provide basic communication, the Captain Kirk universal translator, but not high quality, okay? It's just to allow for language to be understood. It's not high quality, because you can't do high quality this kind of stuff. You just can't do it. That's why France left Google to go work in biotechnology stuff. And then he came back and went to Facebook, because he went to go work on stuff that he can focus on and get high quality. But he came back to Facebook. But the reality is that it's not to provide high quality. Okay. And it can't. And there are too many factors. And despite all these parameters that I've said, these 50 billion parameters, you just can't do it. There's not one model can handle all this stuff. I mean, with Carnegie Mellon, we did have a model that we tried to do for multiple languages of different language types and typology, and we did it. But it doesn't achieve everything you want for all languages. We were aiming for humanitarian aid relief, and that's worked well for that kind of stuff. But once you want to start using it for other purposes, that one model isn't always going to cover it. That's why I think a multi-model approach is usually good, depending where you're going to do it. But it costs more when you do that. Another thing to think about here is, I mean, we are, another thing I've said in some other of my videos about, I made a whole video on the kind of the contrast between rule-based to statistical and neural-based machine translation. Not in itself. I mean, it was good in some ways, right? Because it pushed us to think beyond and to be able to get the corpus stuff. But then the problem is, it only works with big language. You got a lot of content, right? A lot of resources, language resources, corpora, what do you want to call these things? Databases. But it only works with us. You got a lot of data. Now the neural approach is supposed to kind of help with this, right? I mean, this is where I usually say, in these kinds of situations, the rule-based system is actually pretty good. It's actually good for this, because you can just train it on all the language rules that are known. And a lot of these languages are well known. I mean, there are over 1,000 languages that we know rules about, because people have written theses and doctor dissertations on stuff and papers and all this stuff. So all this stuff is known. I mean, what are there, 1,000 languages out of the Bible translated into it? So, and usually when they do that, they have already done the linguistic work, right? And they've already published papers on the linguistics aspects of it. So all this stuff is known. So for these other 7,000 languages, I mean, a neural model trying to do all this corpus-based stuff is not the right approach. I don't think it's the right approach. I wouldn't do it that way. I would say for those, we want to do rule-based stuff. Yeah, it costs more time. Find a better way to do rule-based stuff. Optimize that. I've done it. It can be done. I've optimized a lot of stuff, that rule-based stuff, and it works really, really fast. Just you get how you tweak it and how you do it. But I think this approach to having one model that covers all languages, all based in corpus-based, collection. That's tough because you got to train the people how to do the corpus collection. This is really hard to do. I mean, it's not hard to do. I've done it. I've been out there in the field doing this stuff, and done speech and text data, and with lots of background noise, right? And it can be done, but it takes time. It takes lots of time. It takes lots of work, and it costs a lot of money. And 200 million is nothing, right? For this kind of stuff, it's just it's a drop. What needs to be kind of put in this kind of thing. So I would say that they really need to think about looking at the rule-based approaches, trying to combine them and use the rule-based approaches, because the things we already know. We already know this linguistic stuff. All these analyses and stuff. We already know about these languages. This is nothing new. But we're trying to achieve a thing that works well with major languages that have lots of written data, lots of written content. The speech content, we've already got that. Every day, 8 billion people in the world are creating speech content, right? We just have to collect that. But that's unorganized, completely disorganized and unorganized speech content. And then you don't know what to do with it, because these are just sounds, right? You have to convert them into meaning. For basically, of those 7,000 languages, we only know 1,000. We only know what they are, right? So you got 6,000 languages. We don't know how to determine what the meaning is yet, with systems and grammatical analysis and all that. So I think that there are things after you've done. Made this call for people, come talk to me too, and we'll think about how to do it. I mean, it's good that it's open source, and it's good that it's opened up. But I think that the way to have a single model for all needs, isn't going to work. I mean, it'll move us in the direction, but we won't achieve it, because what we're doing is we're believing in. I mean, what I usually say for when I get into projects, the first thing I tell all the funders is that for me to participate, they all have to sign an agreement, which means that they cannot watch Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel Comics, DC Comics, or any other science fiction film or book for the next year, because they need to stop believing what the movies say, because the movies are selling us science fiction. But we believe that, right? We all believe that that's what we have today. So we want that today, and we're not going to have that today. I say if you want something practical and realistic, then I'll work on it. But I'll help move the needle towards the science fiction. But usually that's not going to be, the thing that we're going to be able to work on to achieve tomorrow, because it's all in the movies, right? And another joke that I kind of say, and it's you look up the manslator. The manslator's a translator system, kind of a joke. But the idea of it is, these earbuds, okay? We want to put translation systems into these earbuds. Voice translation systems that allow men and women to be able to really communicate between each other's language, between their differences, right? But I say, that everybody kind of laughs when I say this, right? Because we know it's impossible. Because there's no way that we can actually trust in a computer to actually help men and women understand each other, right? Just go read all the books by Deborah Tannen, and Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, and the differences. I mean, there are lots of. Deborah Tannen, Georgetown. She specialized in this discourse analysis, men and women. I don't want to go into other genders here. You know what I mean? But this kind of stuff there are many, many differences between, and that's just one thing. I mean, that's a basic gender thing. But all cultures, you get a lot of cultural differences. That there have been videos here. I mean, there's stuff on 75% of commission. Some say 55, some say 75. I usually say 75% of all communication is gestural. It's kinetic. It's distance. It's the distance between me and you. The gestures I'm using, the signs I use, anything we do to do anything. And only really 25% is audio, the audio signal, and maybe the written content, the written orthography. But 75% or up to 75% is the rest. And this in between language, beneath different cultures, this causes all kinds of miscommunication, misunderstandings. This is all the bloopers that come up in the diplomatic relationships or relations of interpreters, right? It's all these extra things. So, I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying that Mark of Meta isn't. I mean, I'm not saying it's foolish what he's doing. He's got the money to put at it, and but because they're trying to do R&D, right? They get to actually write off tax credits to be able to do R&D stuff too. So there's a reason to do this as well. But I think we can still move the needle in that direction. But to believe that this is the only approach which will make a breakthrough, I don't agree with that. Because I think there are other ways we could do this, and we can reuse existing stuff we already had before. Now we realize how to do that better, right? But I think there's this open discussion. I mean, I'm not saying I'm right, but I got a lot of experience doing this. Have done a lot of languages, and I've seen what works, and I've seen a lot of stuff that doesn't work. And I avoid a lot of stuff that didn't work too, including some of this. I've sometimes avoided using big corpus collection things for certain reasons, because it doesn't always work. Because you got to have that data. And to create that data is really tough. Not tough. It can be done, but you got to have money, got to have funding, right? And I've been lucky at a period of time to have had 2 years of funding where I could do it for 3 languages. I could hire three people per language and just create the databases and do it just as fast as we could. And we optimized that data. Wrote a lot of conference papers about it. I've been in a lot of big conferences, and the geek, natural language processing geeky stuff. So, but creating those databases and creating clean data that's annotated, that's tough. Well, it's not tough. It's just a lot of work. You got to do it right. And there are not actually people that are training people from Asia and Africa. Can stretch, and there are 54 countries in Africa, right? So I know people that are working in natural language processing. They're all saying there's no training on how to do this stuff. How to create the corpus and how to collect data and how to create the data before it can be usable in these systems. So everybody's kind of like on their own, rodeo ride, trying to figure out how to do it. And when you do everybody doing their own way, you got to consolidate it. It's going to be tough. So, so those are some of my thoughts. Just a response to the video. Great having the news. Hey, what you guys do is great. It gives us stuff to think about and talk about, and have lots of conversations about how to do it, how to lessons learned what we've already done in the past, and looking at how we can do it better. So hope that's my thoughts for today on at least that single topic. So hope you like it. Thanks.